You don't interrogate somebody like that for a couple days or even a couple weeks. This man needs to go to Guantanamo Bay for months or years for very painstaking and elaborate questioning.
That is the voice of Ambassador Bolton here last week on our program talking about the accused terrorist mastermind captured in Libya about a week ago. Al-Libi, though, is not a gitmo. He's here in New York City as we speak, and he will be in court later today, 12:45 Eastern Time, facing charges of terrorism for the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings in Eastern Africa. So much for the painstaking and elaborate questioning, John Bolton. The ambassador is with me now. I see you chuckle there. I know you don't find this funny. You were very serious last week in that you thought the Americans had to hold this man at sea for not weeks, but months and beyond. Explain.
Right. The bringing Al-Libi back to the United States, arraigning him this morning under a pending indictment in federal court, is the epitome of the Obama administration's approach to the war on terrorism. That is, that we should handle it as a law enforcement matter. That what Al-Libi has done over the years is nothing more than a series of bank robberies. What this means, I think, is that Al-Libi is going to use this criminal trial as a forum for propaganda for his own cause. I don't think he's going to give us any new information. I think it's very doubtful in the week or a little bit over a week he was on that Navy ship that he broke his own discipline to reveal any new information. If anything, he was probably giving us disinformation. I think this represents a huge loss for the United States in the war on terror.
You don't think there's any possibility this guy was taken into captivity, got scared, and started singing like a bird?
There's a chance of it, and the sun may not come up tomorrow either. You know, he knows from frequent proclamations by the Obama administration, they just couldn't wait to read him his Miranda rights. They weren't going to do anything that might offend his sensibilities in terms of the way they interrogated him. And his discipline comes from his religious fanaticism. So I think the odds are the best we got was stuff that we already knew or disinformation, which I would actually worry about more than if he had simply remained silent.
It's a good point. There's a lot of disinformation, you know, over the interrogation of the past 10 to 12 years. But we thought they would interrogate him for weeks, and apparently he has bad health, identified as having hepatitis, and the report suggests that he refused food and water. And that's the reason why his interrogation was cut short. What do you think of that, if true?
Poor baby. You know, there are excellent medical facilities at Guantanamo Bay, and I'm sure that the doctors there could have gotten him back into good shape very quickly. You know, this is a fundamental philosophical choice for Americans. Do you think that the threat of international terrorism can be handled the way we handle robberies of the local grocery store, or do you think we need to treat it as, I think is the proper way, as a war against the United States? We'll see what happens now, but I think the terrorists recognize they've got an administration that they can play for all it's worth, and that's what they're doing.
Do you have any idea about the evidence that we have against him? I mean, this is 15 years later now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a near certainty that he was a ringleader of the bombings of the Kenya and Tanzania embassies back in 1998 and quite likely a number of other terrorist attacks. So I don't doubt that we've got evidence. The question is, can it fit the standards of an American criminal trial? Is this evidence admissible? Can we prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Now, people say, but he's entitled to due process. No, he's not. He's not entitled to due process any more than any other combatant who takes up arms against the United States. And that's the fundamental difference between the criminal law paradigm on the one hand and the law of war paradigm on the other.
Just one more point here. I want to emphasize this. You believe if this goes to trial now, that he uses the American legal stage for his own platform?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility he'll plead guilty, or if he pleads not guilty, the kind of case that he would present will be why America, in effect, is guilty. He will try and put us on trial, and I'm afraid under the rules we operate in the criminal justice system, he may well find us a very good propaganda platform.
Relevant to the bombings in August of 1998, it's my understanding there are 3 others still wanted. And you don't know if he will give up these names or whether we even know where these people are. But this guy was living in plain sight in Tripoli, Libya when we picked him up.
No, you have to ask, what involvement did he have perhaps in the assassination of Ambassador Christopher Stevens last September the 11th? What other activities was he engaged in? I think it's all relevant. He's been out there for 15 years since the embassy bombings, engaged in a lot of terrorist activities potentially, and I bet we found out next to nothing about them during this week of interrogation.